Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming back again to hear a very important story slash interview. I'm here with one of my good friends. I've been friends with him for maybe 2 years or such. I've
Yeah,
known him for
it's
about
about
2
that.
years. That's right. And so I love his story. I love where he's going in his life, and I love learning from him. I have followed him. I have listened to what he has to say. I've read his posts, and I definitely think he is worth someone to talk to, especially all of us who have gone through deconstruction or are continuing to evolve in every facet of our life. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Would you please take a moment and introduce yourself, my friend?
Of course, and thank you so much for the compliments. You're always so kind to me, Brad. My name is Maxim Novikov, and I run a page over here on Instagram where I discuss everything from faith deconstruction and soon will be reconstruction. And I discuss social justice and the importance of spirituality coming into the material and becoming something that is not solely just for personal development, but eventually reaches out to the collective. And which would mean like social justice, activism, and things of that sort. And I'm very passionate about mysticism and all those sorts of nerdy things, as well as helping people with deconstruction and all of that. So I stay busy.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And if any of us need to go back and look up some of those words that he just mentioned, feel free. It's awesome, isn't it? Okay, so with that, why don't you take us through, kind of let us know a little bit about your religious background.
Oh, sure. So I was raised evangelical. Well, I kind of have like a very diverse background. So I'll go all the way back from when I was in Russia, where I was born, and kind of move you through that through chronological order.
Okay.
So I was born in Russia, Voronezh, and I was baptized in the Orthodox Church. And so I still have my cute little cross from the Orthodox, which that's the saint from Saint Maximus the Confessor, who I would like to say that I'm named after, but I'm not actually sure. But my name is Maxim, Maximus the Confessor, you see. So I was baptized in the Orthodox Church, and then I was later adopted by your typical conservative evangelical family when I was around the age of 4, close to the age of 4. And that was great until I realized that I was gay at around 7 or 8 years old. And what I mean by it became a lot more conscious in my mind. And so at that time, I was attending a Baptist church, and with my actually was when I first came to the States, it was a non-denominational church, which is pretty much just Baptist with a little bit of speaking in tongues, with like not a whole lot of guardrails, so they can pretty much get away with anything. And then I transitioned later to going to my grandparents' First Baptist Church, which is a very conservative church. And then at around 10 to 11 years old, I would say, 10 to 11, I started attending my mother's new church, which happened to be a Pentecostal church, which a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what Pentecostals are. And so a lot of people, whenever they imagine what that is, they think of people with very long skirts and no makeup and long hair. And that was not the denomination by which my Pentecostal church participated in. In a weird way, it was kind of this, it was really just this collection of people that other churches in the community did not really welcome wholeheartedly. And so they kind of just gathered in kind of this little charismatic chapel, and they were welcomed there. And so although I have a lot of trauma from that church, I can also see the beautiful aspects that I want to adopt in moving forward since leaving, is this kind of welcoming and accepting of people of all diverse backgrounds, no matter their financial stance or, their religious beliefs, or, list the difference, right? Right. And so, and then when I was about so being in the Pentecostal church in this charismatic place, I discovered that I was gay. And then I was like, oh, well, shit, this doesn't really make a lot of sense because I'm Christian. So people like me aren't supposed to be gay. And so that followed for about 10 to about 17. I suffered with extreme depression and suicidal ideation and other sorts of things because of the doctrines and theologies that told me that my inherent being and my inherent humanity was evil and sinful and nothing that can be in alignment with God. And for me, that in and of itself is so traumatizing because I, being raised in that culture and community, so badly wanted to be welcomed and accepted by God. That was the being or the person at the time that I most wanted to emulate, and the person that I most wanted to be like was like God, like Jesus. And so to hear that my inherent beingness automatically separated me from that was devastating. And so in those 7 years from like 10 to 17, I spent those years really searching to kind of become straight or to, remove this, demon out of me, which even led up to a point where I had accepted to undergo an informal exorcism to it's so absurd, like when I say it back, but at the time, I was so excited for this informal exorcism because I wanted so badly to have this gay demon out of me so I could be welcomed and accepted by God. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. So, so yeah, I've done everything to become straight. I mean, I've heard every single life-changing story about those people who are ex-gays. And I've done it all. I mean, if you would have told me to drink bath water, I would have done it. So I left the church at around 17 years old when I remember saying a prayer to God at the time and saying, if it's okay for me to be straight, give me peace. I mean, if it's okay for me to be gay, give me peace. If it's not, just kill me in my sleep, was the prayer.
Wow.
And fast forward, I would say probably about 6 months later, I hadn't thought about being gay in that 6 months, which was so absurd to me because it had become a perverted obsession for me. And so for me to have come to a point where I'm like, wait, I haven't thought about being gay or that I'm going to hell in so long, and thinking, and at that point, I'd already suffered with insomnia and obsessing over this and depression and all that. And to think that I mean, the best I can recollect is that it was after that prayer that I'd kind of come to peace. And then I eventually came out as gay, and I was still very Christian for about 2 or 3 years, sort of on and off. And then I eventually was like, I'd removed myself from the church indefinitely and kind of went on this deconstruction journey that has led me to becoming, I guess, what you would call agnostic. And spiritually welcoming of all faith traditions, even Christianity in its healthiest form. So that's a little bit of a roundabout of where I'm at, where I've been, all that.
Basically, you have a crock pot of
Trauma,
religions, denominations, everything mixed in there.
Yeah. It's kind of like interfaith before I knew what that was.
Wow. I am
Interfaith of Christian.
Yeah, I tell you, I'll just make a note of this right now. If anybody has want to even know more about his backstory as we continue to move on, we have done a live together before, and I can put that link in there so you can watch and listen to more of his backstory. But as we move on here, you mentioned deconstruction. What does that mean to you? Like, when did that begin? How did you manage that process of growth?
So I would say that I've been deconstructing before I knew what deconstruction was. I remember being I was really young. I probably was like 7 or 8. And I remember going up to big kids church where all the little kids would go up to sit with their parents for like regular church service. And I remember before the service had began, all the kids were welcome to go up to the front and we would hear like a Bible story. And I remember the Bible story was about Adam and Eve, believe it or not. And I remember listening to it and I was so infatuated by the story. And I had asked a question that literally silenced the room. And
Oh.
all I'd ask was, well, if God had made everything good, and he said it like 7 times, how did the devil get in the garden? And I remember the person who was telling the story looking at me, and her entire face had like shifted. And she looked at like a coworker or peer, whatever they call, other people that are adults that are leading, a deacon, I don't know. She looked at him, and I was like escorted out of the room for being a disruption, a disturbance, whatever. And I was super young. I didn't even know what in the world was happening. And so that's like my first experience of really that I can recollect of deconstructing without even intending, but asking rational questions. And so whenever you ask, like, what is deconstruction? I think it's this examination of principles, of teachings, and it's for us to kind of examine, dissect, be curious about, and ask questions. And that's really just the purpose of deconstruction. And so anytime I see those differing beliefs saying that it's not okay for people to deconstruct, what they're really saying is that it's not okay for people to ask questions unless they come to a specific conclusion that they've orchestrated for them. And that to me is very dangerous.
No, I think that's a great explanation. I always likened it to the idea that you're allowed to ask questions as long as it's in this certain box.
Yeah.
And as long as your answers stay within that certain box, because as soon as it goes out of that box, control was lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And that's really what the church has, is that is their main totem, is the fact that they have such a well curated set of controls around a group of people. Like that is their superpower. And so once they lose that control, they don't really have anything to stand on because their doctrines are faulty, their theologies are questionable. And so if they don't have the control, they're out of tactics. And that's why I think right now we're seeing such a rise in discussions around kind of this exodus of the church, where people are getting up and leaving their churches. And this was really, I think, this is, by the way, this is nothing new. This has happened throughout centuries. This is church history in and of itself. That's why we had, quote unquote, the Reformation. And so this is not new. This is just new for us. And so these churches that are scared and all this, all of these things have already happened, and the church was okay. Well, not rather the church, but I think the healthy central message of Christianity was okay. But, you know, just like everything, things have to be destroyed to evolve. So, you know.
So knowing that you're walking through this deconstruction, you're deconstructing yourself, you're a critical thinker, which oftentimes is not allowed in the church. How did you navigate those challenges, and what made the difference in your healing?
So in the beginning of my deconstruction, like consciously deconstructing, I did not handle it well. I was pretty much just a basket case. I had so many questions. I had so many thoughts. I remember, I feel so bad for my coworkers and especially my mother, because I'd be finding out all these new things and I would just be word vomiting to anyone who would listen, because this was like, I was going through these epiphanies and I didn't know who else to tell. And so thankfully, I'd come up with the really wise decision to make an Instagram account where I can share my thoughts strategically. And it just so happened that people liked what I had to say, and that became a thing in and of itself. So I bring that all the way back to how did I begin deconstructing, was through word vomiting and just telling anyone who would listen, eventually curating that and bringing it to a space that it's appropriate. And but I still had, you know, issues in my personal life, because I guess in the way that I was growing at the time, it seemed so sudden. Because for a little bit of a background, prior to my deconstruction, I was heavily conservative, heavily racist, internalized homophobia, all of these things. And so when I kind of had this epiphany moment, and it like lasted for so long, it was kind of a shock for my mother, because here she thought she had raised me well and that I was this, you know, conservative Republican, you know, gay for Trump, even all of that. And so for me to go from that to, like, it seemed like overnight I'd become like this radical, progressive Christian, liberal, etc., like my mother's nightmare. And I remember my mother in the car, I guess I just overwhelmed her. And she's like, Mox, you've got to stop. She's like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't even know how to talk to you anymore, because I don't, this isn't, you're not the person I knew. And it seems like it's all of a sudden. And so it was really hard for, I think, my mother's and I's relationship, because I made such a drastic change in such a short period of time, that it's definitely affected our relationship. Do I regret it? Not at all. I've just had to learn that my journey is not the same journey as hers. And so me forcing her to align with my beliefs is likely never going to happen. And so extending that thing called grace and loving her amidst our disagreements, which are sometimes really hard to disagree on. Yeah, I think that that's been a stressful area in my own life in deconstruction, but it's something that is doable, but it takes a lot of patience, and it asks you a lot of the time, what battles are you going to choose? And is these battles worth, you know, deteriorating a relationship or hurting each other's feelings in the process? And so being more mindful in the ways that you execute your ideas, and being mindful of people that are somewhere where you used to be, is really important. It's also just important to remember that you used to follow by those beliefs and ideas at one point. And so if not, just having grace for yourself at that time by extending it towards them is such a powerful tool that I use in my deconstruction.
Yeah, you mentioned there, you know, I love that last part, especially. You mentioned, hey, you used to believe the same things, right? Yeah. I think a lot of times we forget that as we deconstruct, which is like, how can you believe this when we forget that we used to believe that, right?
And very devoutly, like we were the poster child for that belief system. And so it's important that we remember where we come from and understand that just as passionate as we are about these new values, they're just as passionate about their values. And yeah, it's a tricky, and I think another thing is that there's no right way to go about this. There's only some things that help. And I think mine is just mindfulness and practicing the pause before I say something, because sometimes my words can be cutting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was, hey, you don't have to burn everything down at once.
No, not at once. Yeah.
No, or else I mean, I understand about the word vomit and repeating back, hey, I just learned this. I did that same exact thing. And it was like, okay, slow down, right? You know, and I had to learn to kind of slow down and take a breath.
Yeah. Something I thought about, and it dawned on me while I was arguing with someone about this specific belief. And it dawned on me while I was talking to this person who is evidently, obviously, of an opposing belief system. And I'm trying to get approval of my own ideas because I think it matches the scripture, but the scripture that I'm speaking of is very foreign to them. And so here I'm trying to get acceptance from a world I've already transcended or walked past. And I thought that was really fascinating, that I'm looking for approval from the same place that caused me harm. I'm looking for approval from the same people that forced my exile. And so it's important to remember that sometimes you don't need approval from people that you've grown past or you know, transcended past their beliefs.
That right there is gold. Yes, totally. Okay, so moving into that, okay, that was incredibly well said. So moving into that, you had talked and mentioned that you're very different from the first time we talked. All right. Would you mind sharing how things are different for you now?
Oh my God. I would say that so many things have changed in just the 6 months that we last spoke. And it's all really thanks to our mutual friend Blair,
Oh,
who has been such a great service and friend during this time away from social media. One of the things that really has changed for me is my understanding of spirituality
mm,
from being something that is transcendent to being something that is very organic and something that really reflects what it means to be radically human.
mm, mm.
And so what I
Explain
mean
that a
by
little
that,
bit. Yeah,
huh?
explain that a little.
Yeah. So I think what I mean is that when I would think of mystical experiences, when I would desire to have these spiritual moments, what I was really wanting was to be special and to transcend the moment.
Mm,
So when I think of mystics such as Thomas Merton and Teresa of Avila and others who from their writings, these very poetic writings, they transcended their lived experience and all that. And that's something that I yearned for myself. And it took me a long time to realize that those poetic illustrations don't always necessarily reflect what is really happening in the moment, the organic experience. And also to realize that we often in the spiritual community say that everything is spiritual, but I think we could probably replace spiritual with what it means to be human in its fullness, because what it is being mindful of the moment. So it's not because there's something special that happened with a dove, it's that you notice the dove. And
mm.
that's the beauty and the transcendent moment that takes you out of your head and into the beauty of what is around you.
Wow.
And so in my evolution of thought when it comes to spirituality, I used to really want these profound, prolific, um, you know, crazy enlightening moments. And it was taking me away from the radical special moments I could be having right here and right now. And also I think that spirituality for me kind of became an ego trip because I wanted to be set apart. I didn't want to be a part of the collective. I wanted to be something special. I wanted to be something that was better than. And I think what that's still connected to is my roots in the unhealthy version of Christianity, which is always this work, this kind of capitalist system in which we're always working to be approved of and commodified and all these different things. And so, yeah, I think that's me trying to seek approval and seeking to be special was really just me trying to heal my wounded child. I'm trying to earn acceptance in the church because of my feeling of lack thereof, because of my being gay and queer. And so now when I think of spirituality, I no longer look at it as trying to be set apart, but rather who am I in this moment? How does it help me to relate better to those around me? Because if we look at Jesus never looked to be set apart. He just wanted to be a part of the group. He wanted to be involved. He wanted to create community. And I think that that's really what it means to be spiritual is to be the one who attracts community and makes people feel welcomed. And that's really where we start to feel that's how we become fully human. That's at least my take.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And you're right. When you talk about Blair, informal mystic, in case you're interested about going and visiting her on IG, she does a really good job of calling that out, right? And so I have found that the majority of my clients, spirituality changes for them, right? Because it's no longer this dogma set that Christianity holds the key to spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly their eyes are kind of open and saying, hey, I can still be spiritual. I just don't have to be this.
Yeah.
Or it means something different than this.
Yeah.
And there's a freedom in realizing that, because I think the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, all these people lied to me. Or I felt like they lied to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I don't want anything to do with it.
Right.
Right. And the anger keeps them from experiencing any kind of spirituality.
Of course. Yeah.
So I I think there's a healing and a progression in that, which kind of leads me to my next conversation with you, or next question is you had talked about before about holding on to anger, right? I think that's a common early stage.
Yeah.
How did you end up letting go of that anger towards the church?
So as I was thinking about this question, when you sent it over to me, I realized that I don't think the goal is to get rid of anger. I think it is to work with it. And so I will never stop being angry about the harm the church is projecting onto people. I will never stop being angry about people being sent to conversion therapy camps because of their misinformed church and family. I'll never stop being angry about that. But if I allow the anger to just stay in my body, then it's of no good. It's just me being angry and there's no result coming of it. But if I can actually use that anger to advocate for specific issues, whether that's harm expressed by the church towards people, or whether it's issues not even relating to the church, whether it's innocent Black young boys being shot down in the street by police, or our healthcare system where it disproportionately affects Black women giving birth as opposed to white people giving birth. And so I'm never going to stop being angry about that, but that doesn't mean that I can't use that anger to create something beautiful, which is creating change, advocating for change, and informing others about these important issues so we can create change together. Again, bringing in community, bringing in the collective.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. On the heels of that, would you mind just kind of sharing with us about the hope you have now in your life?
Oh my God, the hope that I have today.
Yes.
I think hope has even changed for me. I think what I do have hope in is that I can make decisions, that I can choose to either, like they say, what is it, like to become better or bitter. I have the choice. I have hope in my ability to learn and create change from the education that I'm receiving. And I have hope that people can change because I'm a living example of that change. And so my hope is really grounded in what can I do? And when it comes to spirituality, I think where hope relies is that my answers are constantly evolving, and that's okay. And so I have hope that my answers will always be changing and that I'm constantly evolving alongside others, though, too. And so that's kind of my little understanding of hope and where I have hope, which it's not in something outside of me. It's the hope that I have inside of me. And it's the hope that that what is reflected within me, which is the ability to critically think, to change and adapt, is also possible for other people because I'm no special. I'm nothing special. And so that's really where I'm grounding my hope in.
So was that a hard paradigm to shift coming out of the church for what you're taught hope is like?
How does the church normally understand hope?
Well, I guess, yeah, it's a great question. I guess it kind of depends on denomination at the same time, because denomination, our hope is in Jesus. But at the same time as our hoping in Jesus, it's there because of how bad we are.
Yeah.
Right. It's there because, I mean, we're the one that drove him to the cross, because of our sin, and inherently bad and evil. So has that shifted for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was when I started to see the goodness in myself, I realized, and this is going to sound really heretical, that I didn't need this off-planet God to save me, that I could save myself, because the evolution that I was taking had shown me that I had been saving myself all along. And so adapting and changing and evolving in thought, I was bringing within me life. I felt happier. I was becoming more selfless. I was doing all the characteristics and qualities of that which was Christ, and it was showing up in my own life. And I was creating life within myself and around me. And so it is in that hope in myself that I no longer had to rely on something outside of me to tell me that I was good, because I knew it for myself.
There you go. That's well said. And that is a huge struggle for people that are coming out of a toxic religion.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh my
to
God,
have that mindset to think, okay, I can actually make decisions on my own. I'm not a terrible person, all those kinds of things that come up. So let me ask you this, knowing this new growth that you've had, what are you looking to, if you've even landed on this, what are you looking to accomplish through your newly formatted IG page?
Well, that is currently under development. I am still working on myself. So what had happened was, when I decided initially to walk away from Instagram, it wasn't indefinitely. So I will be back eventually, but I knew that I needed to take a year to work on myself, because I felt like I lost my purpose. I felt like I lost my reason for why I was doing that. And so right now I'm kind of connecting back to the why. Why do I even want to be a public speaker? Why do I even want to speak publicly about my own journey? Like, is that passion still there, or has that passion just evolved into a different sector, or a different intention, or a different goal? And so right now I'm kind of in this place of developing that and finding out, what am I passionate about? And so right now, if I can give you a little bit of a hint about what I'm passionate about.
Yes, please.
So it has something to do with kind of bringing spiritual wisdom into incarnational realities. And so oftentimes when we think of spirituality, when we think of these wisdom thoughts, it stays within theory, and it doesn't really change anyone's life at all. It doesn't bring along any change with it. So, you could be meditating all day in a hut, but if the people outside of your hut is starving, your spirituality is as good as dead. And so it's about this kind of reforming of what is spirituality, and how can it go from being something that is solely about personal development, which is a very important key, but also doesn't stay there, and actually starts to extend itself towards other people and communities. And so mindfulness not just being about, the micro mind, but the macro mind. How is, like, instead of just thinking about, it's good to feed the hungry, well, why? And actually participating in that theory of feeding the hungry. Right. So, and not for the intention of selling an idea or a religion or a philosophy, but actually going out and actually helping people just to do it, because, it's fun, actually. So
basically, and I'm going to really dumb it down here. Really dumb it down. It's practicing what the church says they do, but they don't.
Yeah. Well, the church has always been good about feeding people, but it's always been with terms and conditions apply.
It's a hook, right?
It's a hook. It's a way of selling something. And I think that we've evolved past that. I think we evolved past that way long ago. I think it's just not because when it comes to capitalism, which the church is a great supporter of, it's always about the bottom line. And so the church always thinks, well, what are we going to get out of helping the community? Are we going to get a tax write-off at least? That's usually where the thinking is. And the reason I know that is because I know people who work in the offices of different churches.
You're not wrong. It's like, how many people can we get to attend if we do this?
Yeah. I mean, and when we think about, bringing people in, whether this is the intention of the church or not, you're bringing people in by feeding them, by giving them clothes, by giving them backpacks for back to school. But also there's that question of, well, are you doing this because you are receiving something, whether that's more people to attend your church, whether which means tithing, etc. And so it's about doing good without an intention, but without a self-motivated intention, or for self-gain.
Yeah, I love it. I cannot wait for you to officially launch your page.
Yeah.
Now I noticed that you have like maybe just 2 or 3
Yeah.
posts on it right now.
Yeah.
I'm glad I've saved some of your other ones.
Oh,
Uh,
good. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that being the case, obviously, I love your new direction. I'm excited for it. How can people that are watching this, all of us that are part of this, how can we follow you? When will we know that this new launch is taking place?
So you can follow me on Instagram. That is where I am mostly active. So if you ever need to contact me, if you ever need questions, always come to me. Always come to my Instagram. If you would like some old writings from a long time ago, I have a website, which is just Marcum.com, MAKCUM.com, where you can find a lot of my old writings, which are more reflective of kind of the earlier part of my deconstruction. And I also have some book resources on there. And you can also follow me on YouTube, because I do have a YouTube page. But whenever I started making videos, that was when my journey had kind of halted. And I was like, oh, wait, I have to take care of myself because I can't give anything else until I deal with it, which was really inconvenient because I had a lot of amazing things planned for this year that all went kaput. And so that's okay. I'm actually happy that that didn't work out. And the things that I'm still considering and thinking of, I'm so happy that I waited, because I have so much more direction and creativity and a more grounded approach to those kinds of subjects. And I know the kind of influence I want my work to have for those that are deconstructing and eventually reconstructing, which I can say that when I do come back, it will be heavily focused on reconstruction and where do we go after we've said what we don't believe. Now, how do we get to what do we now believe? And guess what? There is no right answer. And that's the beautiful part. And so wherever you land, it's a beautiful place, and keep growing.
That's amazing. For all those that are words like, oh, I didn't catch all that, I'll make sure that when this is, actually now, you'll be able to look below and see all of those locations you can follow them on.
Awesome.
And I would encourage everybody, listen, I'm just proud to call him my friend, and I love learning from him. So if you get the chance, check out every single one of his resources. So much to learn. I love the fact that you're now focused on healing, and helping others find that, because I think a lot of times we get stuck in the valley of deconstruction, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
well,
kind
for
of,
my
sorry,
well, for myself, well, for myself, when I began my deconstruction, because I started an Instagram page, it became so much of go tell it on the mountain that I never allowed myself to go into the valleys of my own soul and actually ask those questions for myself instead of trying to commodify it. And so now I'm at a place where I'm able to kind of go into the valleys of my soul and ask those really hard questions and ask myself, like, these things that I've been saying that I believe because I've changed my beliefs, do I still believe those things? And accepting that it's okay to change your mind again.
Yeah. Yeah. We are continually in the process of growth, right? We never stop growing. And that's why anybody asks me, as you've heard me say, anybody asks me, hey, what are you? Agnostic? Are you atheist? What are you?
To be determined.
I'm just like, I don't know. My mind changes. I grow every day. It can change. Right. So, listen, I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing today.
Thank you for having me.
Once again, come away learning, as always. And I feel like, I knew when I'd asked you to do this, that it was going to be gold for everyone that's watching this. And I just hope we can have you back again. And I'm looking forward to following your journey, and I'm excited for you. I'm glad you took that self-care time and really kind of just allowed yourself to work through things. And And that shows maturity, right? And growth. And so great for you. And I think that's a lesson all of us can take.
Thank you so much. You always have such kind things to say. My heart is always full when I walk away talking with you.
Good.
And I'm so happy to see also what you're doing. I'm so happy to see your posts every once in a while. And I love the conversations you're having, because sometimes I'll be able to pop into a live and see all the amazing conversations you're having. And so just thank you so much for your support and your patience and all
Always,
of the above.
always, my friend. I realize that everybody's at a different phase in their life, right? And patience is a must with everybody, and including yourself. And so, it doesn't work on our timetable.
Not at all.
So, well, thank you for being here. Once again, to our audience, check out the links below, and give them a follow. You won't be disappointed. So thank you again, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.